Why nice people always end up alone, broke, or burned out. There's a personality trait that therapists now link to burnout, financial collapse, and chronic loneliness, and it's not anger. It's not arrogance. It's being too agreeable. If you've ever said yes when your body screamed no, if you've ever felt guilty for simply protecting yourself, this video was made for you. And what I'm about to tell you is something the kindness content on this platform almost never says out loud. Imagine the nicest person you know. Take a second. Picture them clearly. Now ask yourself, are they thriving? Or are they exhausted? Because here's the uncomfortable truth that psychology has been quietly documenting for decades. People who are rated as extremely agreeable by those around them statistically earn less, experience higher rates of anxiety, and are far more likely to be taken advantage of in their closest relationships. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that highly agreeable men earn nearly $10,000 less annually than their more assertive peers. For women, the same pattern held, just with different social penalties attached to fixing it. But this isn't a video about money. It's about something more expensive. It's about the slow, invisible cost of building your entire identity around other people's comfort. And here's the part nobody talks about. The people doing this to themselves almost never know it's happening. They think they're being strong. They think endless sacrifice is a virtue. It isn't. And I'll show you exactly why. Diana was 34 when her doctor told her she had developed a stress-related autoimmune condition. She worked in nonprofit management. By every account, she was the person who made the whole operation run. When systems broke, she fixed them without being asked. When volunteers quit, she absorbed their workload. When her director needed someone to work through the weekend, she never once said no, not in 6 years. Her colleagues adored her. Her family called her the backbone of the house. Her friends said she was always there. And when she sat in that doctor's office with her own immune system attacking her body, she asked the question that stopped the room. But I haven't done anything wrong. Why is this happening to me? The doctor paused. Your body has been in a state of chronic stress for a very long time. You've been so focused on managing the outside world that you never noticed the inside one breaking. That's not a metaphor. That's medical documentation. Chronic people-pleasing activates the body's stress response in the same measurable way that physical danger does. Your nervous system does not know the difference between a tiger and a coworker who always needs one more favor. Here's what most motivational content gets completely wrong. They frame overgiving as a character flaw, a weakness, something to be ashamed of and corrected immediately. But developmental psychology tells a very different story. Dr. Gabor Mate has spent decades studying what he calls compassion as adaptation. His finding, most chronic people-pleasers didn't choose this behavior. They learned it, very young, as a survival strategy. When a child grows up in an environment where love feels conditional, where warmth comes with requirements attached, they become experts at reading what others need. They learn to anticipate, to smooth things over, to make themselves small so that conflict doesn't escalate. And then they carry that strategy into adulthood, into jobs, into friendships, into the voice inside their own head. Here's the thing that should change everything for you right now. The people who can never say no aren't morally superior. They are often more frightened than the people who say no easily. The giving is protection. The helping is armor. You cannot fix a behavior you've been told is a virtue. Here's what makes this so hard to untangle. Overgiving creates a loop, and most people never identify it until the damage is already done. It works like this. You help someone beyond what's necessary. Maybe you cover for a coworker. Maybe you lend money you can't afford to lose. Maybe you stay silent when someone crosses a line, because confrontation feels worse than the violation itself. The person receives this. They don't adjust their behavior to appreciate it. They adjust their expectations around it. Your generosity becomes the baseline, the new normal. Next time something is needed, they come to you first, because you always come through. You sense this happening, but doing less feels like failing. So you give more, to try to preserve what you think is the relationship. But you're not maintaining a relationship. You're funding one. Diana recognized this pattern 6 months into her recovery. She pulled up her phone and scrolled through 3 years of message threads. The pattern was identical across nearly every conversation. Others reaching out with needs. Her responding. Her offering. Her apologizing. Her accommodating. Almost never the reverse. She said, "I wasn't in relationships. I was in arrangements. I just didn't know the terms." There's a moment. It's different for everyone, but there's always a moment. For some people, it's a health crisis. For others, it's financial. For many, it comes when someone they sacrificed for walks away without looking back, and they realize all the giving purchased exactly zero loyalty. That moment is brutal, but it's also the most important thing that's ever happened to them. Because here's what nobody tells you about hitting bottom in the context of people-pleasing. It doesn't come from giving too little. It comes from finally stopping and watching who stays. Diana stopped covering extra shifts. She waited to see who noticed. She stopped sending check-in messages to friends who never initiated contact. She waited. She stopped saying yes to requests that cost her sleep, money, or peace of mind. And in the silence, she got her answer. Some people disappeared immediately. Some lasted a few weeks before finding other sources of supply. A handful, a real handful, called her. Not to ask for something, just to ask how she was doing. Those were the relationships she had actually built. She just hadn't known to look for them before. Let's kill a myth right now. The word boundary has been so overused in wellness culture that it's lost all meaning. People hear it and think walls, coldness, distance. What behavioral science actually shows is the opposite. When you clearly communicate what you will and won't accept, and you hold to that consistently, people don't respect you less. Studies on interpersonal dynamics show that people who hold firm limits are rated as more trustworthy, more credible, and more worth investing in by everyone around them. Why? Because they're predictable in the most valuable way. You know where you stand with them. Their yes means yes. Their no means no. There's also something happening neurologically. Every time you say no to something that violates your values or your well-being, the part of your brain associated with self-concept gets a small reinforcement signal. You are literally teaching your brain that you matter. And every time you override that signal to keep someone else comfortable, the message travels in the exact opposite direction. 8 months after her diagnosis, Diana turned down a friend's request to co-sign a loan. Her hands shook when she said it. She had rehearsed the conversation for 3 days. She braced for the fallout. Her friend was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Honestly, I respect that. I wouldn't have done it either." That was it. The conversation Diana had dreaded for 72 hours lasted 45 seconds and cost her nothing. She told me, "I realized I had been paying a tax on disasters that never actually existed. The consequences I feared lived almost entirely in the story I told myself about what other people needed from me." That's the thing about people rebuilding this part of themselves. They're not learning to be selfish. They're learning that the version of generosity they practiced, the endless, no-limit, self-erasing kind, was never actually generosity. It was anxiety wearing a halo. Real generosity has a floor. It means giving from surplus, not from fear. It means helping because you genuinely want to, not because the alternative feels unbearable. It means your kindness has actual weight and meaning because it is chosen, not automatic. When Diana returned to work, she set clear boundaries around her time. She communicated expectations. She stopped absorbing tasks that weren't hers. She asked to be compensated fairly. And something remarkable happened. The quality of her work improved. Her relationships deepened. The people around her began taking more responsibility because she was no longer available to carry it for them. She didn't become colder. She became clearer. If you see yourself somewhere in this video, if there's a version of Diana living inside you, tired and overextended and quietly wondering why no one seems to notice, here's what I want you to hold on to. Protecting yourself is not the betrayal of your values. It is the condition that makes your values sustainable. You cannot pour endlessly from a life that never gets refilled. You are not a resource. You are a person. Act accordingly.